Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaladari Gopijana Vallabha Girivaladari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaladari Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaladari Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to Srimad Bhagavatam class. Today is the 10th canto, chapter 21. Oh no, text 24. Yeah, text 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Ajivyai Kataran Bhavam Yastvanyam Upajivati Natasmad Vindate Kshemam Jarannaryasati Yata Ajivyai Kataram Bhavam Yastvanyam Upajivati Natasmad Vindate Kshemam Jarannaryasati Yata Ajivyai Kataram Bhavam Yastvanyam Upajivati Natasmad Vindate Kshemam Jarannaryasati Yata. Ajivya, sustaining his life. Ekataram, one. Bhavam, entity. Yaha, who. Two, but. Anyam, another. Upajivati, resorts to. Na, not. Tasmat, from that one. Vindate, gains. Kshemam, real benefit. Jarat, from a paramour. Nadi, a woman. Asati, who is unchaste. Yata, as. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation: if one thing is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else, how can we achieve any real benefit? We would be like an unfaithful woman who can never achieve any actual benefit by consorting with her paramour. Purport: the word kshema means actual prosperity, not merely the accumulation of money. Here Lord Krishna boldly argues, just as a woman can never achieve actual dignity or enlightenment from an illicit lover, the residents of Vrindavan will never be happy by neglecting the real source of their prosperity and worshipping Indra instead. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, the audacity that child Krishna displayed before his father and other elders should be understood as an exhibition of transcendental anger aroused when he saw his eternal devotees worshipping an insignificant demigod. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kathamayam Dadati Swapadandikam Vancha Kalpatrubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Translation: if one thing is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else, how can we achieve any real benefit? We would be like an unfaithful woman who can never achieve any actual benefit by consorting with her paramour. Jai Shri Kishori Kishori Ki Gauritai Jagannath Baldev Subramani Ki. Hare Krishna, all devotees, welcome this morning. This is a very, I really like this text. I find that it has different meanings. Like most of scriptural statements can be understood, seen in different ways, different lights. And particularly how this struck me, Krishna here is speaking to the Brajvasis, and they've taken shelter of someone else. They have, consciously put energy, attention, and faith in something other than Krishna. And all of Krishna's pastimes are so instructive. They give many volumes of meaning, and they are orchestrated also to help us overcome our own anarthas. That's the beauty of Krishna Lila, that it's transcendental subject matter for relishing, and at the same time it's giving keys how we have to ourselves progress spiritually. So this is preceding the wonderful Govardhan Puja, wherein the devotees of the Lord have chosen to take that shelter of Krishna. And in that position we see there's perfect harmony. There's perfect harmony with the absolute truth, and therefore all living entities are happy. But when there's disunity or distrust, a lack of faith, then we resort to other shelters, other false shelters. So here, Krishna is saying, if one thing is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else, how can we achieve any real benefit? We would be like an unfaithful woman who can never achieve any actual benefit by consorting with her paramour. So I find that we all, and this is the main obstacle for devotees, is to give up material attachments. If we look deeply within, what is it that is really a good indicator? Prabhupada would say we don't have to take a certificate in Krishna consciousness. You can see yourself by how much detached we're becoming from the material world, from the pleasures, the tidings, the attractions of the material world. And this quality of detachment forms a very deep and basis for the further evolution of bhakti. Unless we're able to see this material world with a materially pessimistic attitude, then despite enthusiasm, energy, and intention, the example is given of rowing a boat with the anchor. So as long as we still have attachment here, and we still see the material world as an enjoyable place, somewhere where I can be happy, then the kind of roots of bhakti can't deepen. So we can think how we take, just as here, the residents of Vrindavan are taking other shelters. Krishna's saying, if there's that thing which is actually sustaining our life, but we take shelter of something else. So what is sustaining our life? It's Krishna. Krishna is actually, but we're taking shelter of other things. We are neglecting that most essential fabric, essence of our being, and we are consciously or unconsciously investing that same attachment that we should place solely and wholly on Krishna on other things in this material world. And we can all examine deeply our heart and mind. You know, we had this yajna at the Moksha Yoga, and the theme was giving up something and taking up something. So we asked everyone we had to make a sankalpa for the fire sacrifice. So think deeply something inside that is holding you back, right? Something, that's the first step to examine. What are these obstacles? And then to have a sankalpa, which means to beseech the Lord for His mercy, to move past something, to come to a next step, in spiritual life. So I find that to refresh again and again our own, and to really examine what is it in my heart that is really who am I worshiping instead of Krishna? Who's my Indra? What are my secret, things that I'm putting in the place of Krishna? And that we have to do some work on, and we have to really pray for that mercy and empowerment to come to overcome those. And that's actually the liberating, the material attachments, they seem like they're going to give some fruit and give us some happiness in life, but they always cheat us, no matter what shape or form. And Bhagavatam is very heavy. Bhagavatam is, this is Krishna in literary form, and we often are, I believe, when we first start reading Bhagavatam, we're quite shocked how bold, how cutting, Bhagavatam is, and Srila Prabhupada is, and the Guru is. That's a certain quality that sometimes stands out, but that is part of this internal potency of Krishna to actually awaken bhakti, is to, as we mentioned in previous class, present the positive, but also negate the opposition. So to positively give this beautiful lila, but also to cut down this deeply rooted desire to try to be the enjoyer in the material world, and try to be the manipulator, and try to put ourselves in a place that we're actually not. So one will never get satisfaction by that, you know? We'll never actually get the happiness we're looking for. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, na dhanam, na janam, na sundarim, kavitam nava jagadishe, amajanmani janmanishre, bhavadar bhaktir hoituki itai. So our acharyas explain that to get to the next levels of devotion, then this type of conviction has to be, established in the heart, that we don't want anything else. And it's also, we know in the 10 offenses, it's considered to maintain material attachments, even after standing so many instructions on this matter. So sometimes, despite having a basic foundation of knowledge, we still tend to cling. We still have things that consciously, maybe even we're not so intent upon giving up, and that prevents us from getting that taste. And the real devotion experience is after anartha-nivritti, when spiritual emotions can awaken. But that the prerequisite for that is having this dedication to not harbor or maintain, anything that would keep us from Krishna. Let me see in the purport here. Yeah, I also find how it's very bewildering. This illusory potency of the Lord is specifically empowered to keep us bound up here, to keep us locked up in this prison house. And Maya will use anything and everything in her power to try to actually just convince us that, no, you don't have to go back to Godhead. Definitely not in this life. If she can just convince us of that, then she's successful. So then life after life, she's going to present some challenge each lifetime, which just keeps us transmigrating, birth after birth. And so the idea that these material attachments are not healthy, the healthy state of the soul is to take full shelter, full repose, full attention. Matchita madgata prana. Have our consciousness always absorbed in the Lord. And that is the actual condition of sanity for the living entity. Otherwise he's insane. He's seeking a water in the desert, a drop of water in the desert. There's a beautiful verse that I just happened to come across in the 9th canto, which really exemplifies, and Prabhupada takes the opportunity to dig kind of deep into this principle. Kadvanga Maharaj, he's often quoted as an example of one who gave up everything even at the last moment. So he says, therefore I should now give up my attachment for things created by the external energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I should gauge in thought of the Lord and should thus surrender unto Him. This material creation, having been created by the external energy of the Lord, is like an imaginary town visualized on a hill or in a forest. Every conditioned soul has a natural attraction and attachment for material things, but one must simply give up this attachment and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this realm is a phantasmagoria. We place so much faith in this bodily concept of life and the things that happen, the small, very small things in life. We blow them way out of proportion and they become such an occupant of our consciousness that we fail to see the bigger picture. Often we can't keep in perspective what is that the spiritual kingdom of God, Vaikuntha, of Goloka Vrindavan, is there right before us. And we are so absorbed in some small, petty, insignificant things. And we're consciously putting our investment in those things. And again, this is rooted in this bodily concept of life, which is Maya's prod to get us to imagine so many necessities that we have outside of Krishna. So many duties that we have. Purport. When passing through a mountainous region in an airplane, one sometimes sees a city in the sky with towers and palaces, or one may say similar things in a big forest. This is called a Gandharvapura, a phantasmagoria. This entire world resembles such a phantasmagoria, and every materially situated person has attachment for it. But Kadvanga Maharaj, because of his advanced Krishna consciousness, was not interested in such things. Even a devotee may engage in apparently materialistic activities. He knows his position very well. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe Yukta Vairagya Muchate. This is the mentality of the spiritual world. Maharaj Kadvanga advises one should give up material attachments and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus one achieves success in life. This is pure Bhakti Yoga, which involves Vairagya Vidya, renunciation and knowledge. And this is actually how I came across this verse, because I was recalling how Sarvabhauma Acharya composed this shloka in glorification of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And I think we only have some of those. I think we don't have the whole poetry that he composed, but this verse is quite well known. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga Siksharta Meka Purusha Puranaha Sri Krishna Chaitanya Sharidadari Kripambudiryastam Maham Prapadye. Let me surrender unto the personality of Godhead, who's appeared now as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's the ocean of all mercy and has come down to teach us material detachment, learning, and devotional service to himself. It's Vairagya Vidya. So these are very interlinked, this detachment and bhakti. He says Mahaprabhu has come to teach us this, and this is the basic teaching of the spiritual master, the bona fide guru in Vedic culture. He teaches how this material world is not the home of the living entity. So this is actually, for some, it seems like a dark message, a pessimistic message. But for devotees, for those whose intelligence, spiritual intellect is awakened, this is a very ecstatic message, actually, to recall, to remember this and keep this on the forefront of our mind. So, at least, yeah, that's how I take it. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inaugurated this movement of Vairagya Vidya, by which one detaches himself from material existence and engages in loving devotional service. The Krishna conscious movement of devotional service is the only process by which to counteract our false prestige in this material world. So this is the root, this false prestige. Even though we are insignificant part and parcels of Krishna, as soon as we get this body, what happens? The ego builds up this false conception of self. And with that, prestige, a place in society, honor, respect, which are all completely illusory. They're all ignorance. They're products of ignorance. And that pride then becomes this foundation for these attachments. Today also happens to be the disappearance day of Sri Ishwara Puri. It's also a very important day for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. But before we get there, there was one other nice verse I always appreciate in Bhagavad Gita. This comes in the 15th chapter. The Yoga of the Supreme Person. Purushottam Yoga. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah. This would be a nice verse to learn. He explains how even the first verse is very deep. Urdhvam mulam adashakyam ashvatam prahoravyayam chandamsi yasya parnani yastram veda savedavit. Supreme Personality of God said, it is said there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. And Krishna goes on to say, the real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. So while we're in this world, we can actually perceive how entangled we are. We can actually perceive our own entanglement. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. That material identification is so subtle that we can't actually extract ourselves. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. So this is just another, in Krishna's words, a beautiful way that he chooses to how to explain this principle, how he wants to paint a picture for us. And Ishwar Puri is known to have been the most dear or prominent disciple of Madhavendra Puri, and he is known for taking care of his spiritual master even at the very end of life, cleaning up after him, and actually rendering confidential service by reminding him about the pastimes of Radha and Krishna at the very end of his life. So I thought this was such a beautiful example of service, how at that difficult stage of life, what did he do? He's allowing his guru to remember Krishna. He's feeding him this transcendental katha to absorb him in the very last moment. And that absorption and taste in Krishna consciousness is what awakens that detachment. It can actually arise independently. They go hand in hand. So the real key is deepening one's taste for these topics of Krishna. And as a byproduct, that detachment awakens. But we also endeavor for that, and we try to train our mind and our intelligence to not make something out of something illusory, to not place so much faith and attention in something. That's buddhi yoga also, the yoga of the intelligence, to keep our intelligence discerning in all moments of life. This helps pull us out of this ignorance. The bodily concept is the ignorant conception of life. So to pull us out of that and keep ideally on a transcendental level, means that one is aloof from that bodily concept of life throughout the day. Continuing with Ishwar Puri, there's a few beautiful incidents also which just, magnify his ecstatic position, consciousness, and also his role. Let me see if I can find here. I found a few nice little stories. But sometimes when you need them, they disappear. Maybe some of the audience also has something they appreciate or recall. If you'd like, you can share or think of something. Okay. Yeah, I can't find it. Anyhow, we know there's many pastimes of him in Mahaprabhu, how he came to Navadvip, and he came to the house of Acharya, and he was dressed he was hiding himself as a sannyasi. He wanted to meet Acharya, but one of the associates of the Lord there, I forget who, it could have been Gadadhar, they kept looking at him and they saw how effulgent this person is. He's wearing ordinary cloth, but they couldn't stop looking. The devotee said, "I'll find out," and he recited some beautiful description of Krishna from Bhagavatam for the Shastra. And immediately Ishwar Puri started shaking and crying. He fell over, and a puddle develops from the tears of his eyes. So immediately they understood, who are you? You're not an ordinary person. We haven't seen devotion like this in Navadvip. So, And then ultimately Lord Chaitanya met him, and Ishwar Puri was captivated by Mahaprabhu's beauty. He said, what is this bewitching personality? He's capturing my heart. You know, Krishna's opulence is considered greatest quality is his beauty. Mahaprabhu's beauty is enhanced with this bhav of Srimati Radharani. So you can just imagine if you got to see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, your heart is already captured. So they began having beautiful exchanges. Mahaprabhu would invite him over for take lunch. And then there's this incident where he was writing a book, and he asked Nimai Pandit at the time to edit it. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu teaches how the role of this humility before the Guru, that I'm not qualified to edit something of your caliber, how can I? But he insisted. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found some point that he had found there could be a better usage of a word. So he didn't want to, but out of service he presented it to Ishwara Puri. And Ishwara Puri appreciated it. He said, I'll consider this. And then later on he came back and he said, you suggested altering this word, but I've decided that actually it's correct as it is. This is actually a proper usage, and I think this word suits better. And this pastime was just quoted that Mahaprabhu felt such ecstasy being corrected. And no one would correct him before. He is the most learned scholar in all of Navadvip. So taking appreciation, or actually relishing being corrected, this is such a benediction actually, because our whole ego and enjoyment is based on I know best. But if we can take satisfaction when we are corrected, this is such a growing practice. Actually appreciating, Dhanadhar Maharaj puts it, you're wrong. Do you remember that you're wrong post? He has a Monday morning greetings. I don't read all of them, but a little while ago, maybe a year ago, he had done, you're wrong. It is really hilarious. You're wrong. It's the thing that just crashes. It's so painful to hear. It's so toxic. What? I'm wrong? Like, no, how can this be? But this is often the best thing for us to hear. I'm wrong. And to appreciate I'm wrong. To actually relish, yeah, I am wrong. Crashes that false ego. And that actually can awaken then this, yeah, what am I? Who am I? Of course I'm wrong. I'm very insignificant. So, as we know, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu then takes initiation. He requests initiation from Ishwara Puri, who says, I'm willing to give you I'm willing to give my life for you, to speak of mantras. So he accepts him. And I thought I would just also quote this verse, which is also very famous, as spoken by his spiritual master, Madhavendra Puri, while he was departing the world, and at time which Ishwara Puri was serving him. We all know this probably. Dina dayadra natahe mathura nata kadava lokyase hridayam tvad aloka kataram daita brahmyati kim karomyaham. O my Lord, O most merciful Master, O Master of Mathura, when shall I see you again? Because of my not seeing you, my agitated heart has become unsteady. O most beloved one, what shall I do now? And Prabhupada quotes how Mahaprabhu took initiation in this Madhva Sampradaya, in which Sri Madhavendra Puri introduced the conception of conjugal love for the first time. And then it said that he was the seed of this emotion in our Sampradaya, and Ishwar Puri was the sprout, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was the tree. And then it continues, the branches and everything, and here we are, hundreds of years later, and Prabhupada is giving, When Sri Krishna left Vrindavan and accepted the kingdom of Mathura, Srimati Radharani, out of ecstatic feelings of separation, expressed how Krishna can be loved in separation. Thus, devotional service in separation is central to this verse. Worship in separation is considered by the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya to be the topmost level of devotional service. According to this conception, the devotee thinks of himself as very poor and neglected by the Lord. Thus, he addresses the Lord as Dina Dayadra Danata, as did Madhavendra Puri. Such an ecstatic feeling is the highest form of devotional service. Because Krishna had gone to Mathura, Srimati Radharani was very much affected, and she expressed herself thus: "My dear Lord, because of your separation, my mind has become overly agitated. Now tell me, what can I do? I am very poor, and you are very merciful, so kindly have compassion upon me, and let me know when I shall see you." Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was always expressing the ecstatic emotions of Srimati Radharani that she exhibited when she saw Uddhava at Vrindavan. Similar feelings experienced by Madhavendra Puri are expressed in this verse. Therefore, Vaishnavas in the Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya say that the ecstatic feelings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu during his appearance came from Sri Madhavendra Puri through Ishwara Puri. All the devotees in the line of Gaudiya Madhva Sampradaya accept these principles of devotional service. And that's in the Madhya Lila. So, Krishna is teaching us that we should repose all of our faith, all of our energy and consciousness upon his lotus feet. And then, if we do so, then we can see this beautiful pastime of Govardhan Lila, where all living beings, all the Brajvasis, and are feeling finally that complete satisfaction, that complete quench of our thirst in material life. Our thirst for Ananda, it never gets quenched here, but when we repose that consciousness and love fully in the absolute truth, then it's like the real life begins, the real festival, the real repose for the soul. And that's awaiting all of us, each one of us. So I'm going to pause there for now. I thank you so much for your kind attention and tolerating me and any and all inadequacies in this short presentation. Krishna, Shri Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Anyone like to comment, question?
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for your class. You mentioned the pastime where Lord Chaitanya corrected, Ishwara Puri asked Lord Chaitanya to correct his one poetic composition. Do you know where that pastime is in the Chaitanya Bhagavat? I mean, I read part of that pastime, but I don't remember the reference. Do you have the reference?
I don't have a reference for
Oh, okay. Anyway, in that pastime, I really appreciated what Lord Chaitanya told Madhavendra Puri. He says, even if a devotee pronounces a particular word, Bengali or Sanskrit, improperly, but if they have love and devotion for Krishna, it's considered authorized. But even if you pronounce all the words correctly, but you have no devotion, then it always remains incorrect. And Bhaktisiddhanta also, this situation is described, and I have a question after this, but in the Bhaktisiddhanta by Bob, there's a chapter called The Use of Languages. I could get the chapter wrong, but something with languages. Anyone could look in that chapter. But basically, the subject matter of that chapter was, some people say that only Sanskrit, if you can't read Sanskrit, then you can't really delve into the scriptures. And Bhaktisiddhanta, he refuted that. He says all languages simultaneously reveal and hide the absolute truth, depending on your motivation. And we see that Krishna says, Tesham satata yutanam bhajatam priti purvakam, dadami buddha yogam tam yenamam payanti te. If you're always engaged in, loving devotion to him, then he'll reveal the absolute truth. And we see Lord Brahma, he didn't have any Sanskrit texts. The Lord just revealed from within his heart. So there's a quote that says, burn it, shred it, alter it, or reject it, the word of God will never perish. So my question is sometimes there's a debate in ISKCON of changing Srila Prabhupada's some of his words, and they kind of alter the meaning. And I just read that where Prabhupada did criticize one of his disciples. But at the same time, as people who are receiving this knowledge, we really have no control over, what words are changed. We're not Sanskrit scholars. We don't know anything, so we have no control. So what do you say to somebody who says, well, who may give the argument, because we don't know, who may give the argument that you can't really really know what Srila Prabhupada says because his words have been changed too much. But we see that if Krishna doesn't give you his mercy, it doesn't matter how much correct Sanskrit you'll always remain dissatisfied. So that's my perspective based on the Sastra. But what do you say to somebody who says that? And from our perspective, I'm not sure if my question was clear, but
I recall this is kind of the opinion of your brother, that even if they do change a few words, that essential meaning it's not being lost. A few editorial, lexicographic or grammatical things. I've been asked this question a few times recently, and at this point, I haven't developed a particular view on it. Actually, I haven't done enough research. My mood is to actually follow my teachers and my gurus, and because they support ISKCON and the BBT, and they don't discourage that, and they don't find fault with that, then that's what I follow. And I feel faithful in that. I feel comfortable with that. It's not something I lose sleep over. And it saves us a lot also of trouble that we can get ourselves into when we try to put ourselves above those who have so much more experience, so much more knowledge, so much more relationships. In terms of the actual meaning coming through, it's something that we should be careful about. We should consider. I think we shouldn't turn a blind eye, that we should be conscientious about, because it is what a huge risk to change, the words of a self-realized soul. So I think we should be cautious, extremely cautious, and probably err on the side of not, of less. Less is more. We see that's a big risk. And also devotees who've been given that service by Prabhupada, if they are such committed and dedicated devotees and exhibiting such pure dedication to Prabhupada, but then at the same time we don't have to always second guess everything they're doing. So it's a little bit of a fine line there, and that's my take on it, if anyone would like to.
This subject matter has been addressed several times by the editors themselves, specifically by Dravida Prabhu and Jayadvaita Maharaj, and has been quite exhausted. So if people are still saying things and having trouble with that, they can be directed, to read Dravida Prabhu's answers, which are, quite satisfactory in my opinion. I mean, example, he gives this example of in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada saying the planets of the Pritis, the Pitris, the planet of the Pitris, which means, you go, if you worship the ancestors, the Pritis, then you go to the planets of the Pitris. So then, in the tape, the devotee who was transcribing, he couldn't understand what Prabhupada was saying, and then hearing, he said, well, the planet of the trees. So if you worship the ancestor, the translation, you go to the planets of the trees. So changing that, then, oh, you're changing Prabhupada's words. So is again the principle that you follow. Prabhupada says, he gave us a direction. You have an authority in ISKCON. You follow the authorities and, you be peaceful at least, And so that type of thing. But it's being addressed quite a bit by both Dravida Prabhu, Jayadvaita Maharaj. There's, all these personalities that are involved in editing and serving Prabhupada in the BBT, Gopi Pranadhana Prabhu, and, so many amazing personalities. So, any person that comes, even persons that you hear, like, oh, Prabhu, okay, you can hear from them.
I've seen some devotees who got into this, and it very quickly becomes offensive, and it very quickly destroys their whole, not only spiritual life, but even their material life. And so, to be on guard, as a devotee, to take the humble position, that's always safe. It's just amazing what this little point can do to to devotees, to devotee communities. To avoid Vaishnava aparadh, that's our main concern, really.
I very much appreciate your last point. And just in the name of, I guess, casting a little harmony on this, because one thing I absolutely abhor is extremes. And this situation is very, very classic for it polarizing people into two very extreme groups. And it's occurred to me that obviously what's being done is a work in progress. And we somehow have developed this very Catholic view that whatever has been edited or changed is now perfect because it's been a reaction to the opposition of the people saying that it was not to be done. And so then we kind of lose the ability to actually look at it with a dispassionate and objective eye, because there may also be mistakes there. Just like the boy, he was a boy who did the first version of Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. He wasn't even really a devotee. He was just a typist, as Brahmananda Prabhu told us. He just came and he needed to do a project for college, and that's why all these mistakes were there. He really wasn't grounded in the philosophy at all. And so he hadn't heard many of Prabhupada's classes. He just wrote for like 6 months. He did the project, and then he left, and nobody ever saw him again. So there were mistakes there, and they should obviously be rectified. And now also there may be some mistakes which have been pointed out, and I think when we take this very strong view, which is actually kind of paradoxical to pushing on the point that the edit should be done, then when we take this strong view against, questioning that, then we just add fuel to the fire of the people who may actually see a mistake and say, hey, we should address this. Whereas in order to create an overall harmony, we really do need to be able to look at the thing dispassionately and see. And I think it requires a little humility, and it requires a Brahminical nature from all sides that are involved in this. And I've seen that in Jayadvaita Maharaj specifically, because I've spoken to him about this. He's even gone so far as to say, sometimes, maybe we did too much. He's not like, no, everything's perfect. That's not his mood. He comes across heavy, but he's very Brahminical, and therefore he's very qualified to do the service. But I think when we who aren't involved in that, the tendency of conditioned souls, and particularly of Kanishta Adhikaris in Bhakti, is to polarize everything and to try to find my camp and then find the other camp who I'm fighting against. And I think that never gets us anywhere. It really never gets us anywhere in Bhakti.
Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Anyone else?
It's just a tight quote. What tika? What's that?
You got about 3 minutes.
All right, Krishna. Anyway, very beautifully put by everyone, including Ujjvala Prabhu. So I like this discussion, but it just reminds me of just the principle of what you were saying. These things could really deteriorate into aparadhs and offenses. And we see that in Narada Muni and Daksha. There was some disagreement, but Daksha started cursing Narada Muni. And Narada Muni was put in the same situation as the Daksha. In the 5th canto, chapter 1, I quoted earlier, I forgot which verse, but basically it says, Narada had a disagreement with Brahma, but Brahma got his way. But Narada Muni never criticized or cursed Lord Brahma. So this is there's a quote that reminds me of these whole disagreement situations. It says, if we agree in love, then no disagreement can do us any harm. If we don't, then no agreement can do us any good. And we see that Vaishnavas sometimes agree externally all the time, but internally, I really hate that devotee. I wish he falls down. So this type of agreement won't do us any good. So even when we see Vaishnavas, they disagree, but they're always wishing each other well. You know, if we say, oh, you changed Prabhupada, well, I hope you fall down, you commit Vaishnava. Okay, all right, go ahead, see how that works for you. Anyway, thank you for letting me share that. All right, go.
Thank you all very much. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Ishwara Puri ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go bring it.